No one identity. Identity is a mosaic, constantly shaped by the interplay of internal self perception and external societal pressures. In today's interconnected world, the fluid and multifaceted nature of identity often collides with rigid societal expectations, leading to conflict, conformity, and the psychological toll of navigating between the two. In this video essay, I will explore the dynamic nature of identity, examining how it is externally imposed, shaped by societal forces, and intertwined with intersectional experiences. Personal identity markers and localized power. To understand the dynamic nature of identity, I will begin by examining my own identity markers and how they move to the foreground or recede depending on context and localized power dynamics. 1. I am a student. At the foreground, in educational spaces, being a student is central. This identity might shape how I am treated by peers, professors, and institutions. But receding outside of academic contexts like casual social settings, my role as a student might become less relevant. 2. I identify as a cisgender woman. At the foreground, in male dominated academic or professional environments, my gender might become more visible, influencing interactions or expectations. But receding in spaces where gender is less emphasized, such as online forums without visible identity markers, it might be less visible. 3. I identify as agnostic, but I was raised Catholic. At the foreground, when discussing religion or participating in religious traditions, such as family gatherings or holidays, my religious background or my current beliefs may come into focus. But receding in secular settings, like in the public or workspaces, my religious identity might not be as visible. 4. I struggle with both OCD and ADHD. At the foreground, when managing academic deadlines, routines, or new social settings, these conditions may shape my experiences and visibility. For example, if I need to request accommodations. But receding in spaces where mental health is not openly discussed or my symptoms are not immediately visible, such as when I mask. This layered and shifting visibility of identity markers reflects how localized power structures and societal expectations dictate which aspects of identity come to the forefront in different contexts. External exposure of identity. Internal versus external social identities. Our identities are not solely self-defined. They are shaped by external categorization, visible traits, and societal cues. Race, gender, and occupation are often imposed labels that conflict with our internal sense of self. This misalignment creates what psychologists call a categorization threat, where external perceptions expose and sometimes distort identity. Behavior and external pressures. Social norms impose powerful external pressures that compel individuals to conform to societal expectations. For example, the concept of instrumental alignment explains how people may adopt group norms or behaviors to gain acceptance or material benefits, even if those norms conflict with their internal sense of identity. Identity expression and self-presentation. Identity often shifts based on audience dynamics. In public settings, individuals are held to external norms, revealing facets of identity that might remain hidden in private. For instance, individuals often present different versions of themselves to different groups, navigating the expectations of each context. The external locus of identity and shapeshifting. Shapeshifting under societal pressure. Societal and relational validation frequently dictate identity formation. This external locus of identity causes individuals to adapt to external demands, often at the expense of authenticity. From childhood, conditional affirmation fosters reliance on external validation, creating a foundation for this dynamic. Modern influences, social media, and capitalism. In the digital age, social media metrics like likes and shares amplify external validation pressures, fostering comparisons and commodifying identity. Similarly, capitalistic systems tie identity to productivity, reinforcing the notion that self-worth is contingent on societal contribution. Societal forces shaping identity. Social identity. There are dominant and non dominant narratives. Social identities are often imposed rather than chosen. For those in non dominant positions, navigating stages of conformity or resistance reveals the pressure to align with dominant cultural narratives. Conversely, dominant identities are shaped by societal privileges, often invisibly reinforced by systemic norms. Intersectionality and the dynamic interplay of identities. Identity categories like race, gender, and disability intersect dynamically, creating unique lived experiences. For instance, disabled women navigate compounded challenges as both gender and disability salience shift based on societal and cultural settings. Similarly, historical legacies influence the prominence of race or disability, underscoring the fluidity of identity markers. Denying agency through design and social norms. Who is the built world for? Hendren's What Can a Body Do explores how societal structures deny agency to entire groups by privileging narrow concepts of normalcy. Environments designed for the average body marginalize those with physical, cognitive, or sensory differences. This systemic oversight forces individuals to adapt to environments rather than adapting environments to accommodate diverse needs. Rosemary Garland Thompson's idea of misfit, or the misfit concept, highlights how exclusion arises from rigid environments, not individual bodies. For example, the need for a custom lectern illustrates how standard architectural dimensions fail to serve diverse users. Structural disempowerment and design exclusion. Hendren critiques spaces that enforce independent living as an ideal, marginalizing those reliant on communal or assisted living arrangements. Inaccessible rooms and buildings strip away autonomy and deny access to basic life activities. Conversely, empowering designs show how inclusive environments can restore agency, as seen in the example of Deaf Space in her book. Public spaces and infrastructure. Public streets often exclude individuals with mobility or sensory differences through narrow sidewalks, poor signage, or lack of ramps. These infrastructural decisions make public participation conditional on bodily conformity to average standards, perpetuating marginalization. Hendren advocates for shared ownership of public space, where diverse ways of moving, and interacting are celebrated. Time as a disabling construct. Modern life's rigid schedules disable those who cannot conform to its place. Hendren's concept of crip time proposes flexibility to accommodate varied capacities, challenging the denial of agency tied to standardized time expectations. The psychological costs of external identity. Passing for acceptance. The act of suppressing devalued identities to adopt favorable ones highlights the internal conflict and psychological costs of aligning with external expectations. Individuals face an ongoing struggle between authenticity and societal acceptance. Respect and misalignment. When external validation fails to respect internal identities, individuals may externally affirm their chosen identities, making these conflicts visible. This dynamic reveals the psychological toll of misalignment. Disability as an identity. Social mode of disability. Disability, like all identities, is contextually shaped by societal attitudes and self-perception. The paradox of visibility highlights how disability often dominates perceptions, while other intersecting identities, such as race or gender, may be overlooked. Strategic essentialism. Disabled individuals may emphasize certain aspects of their identity to gain recognition or resources. This intentional situational shift demonstrates the fluctuating salience of identity markers. Addressing the assignment of singular identities. The mechanics of othering. Humans simplify complexity by assigning singular identities, often reducing individuals to one dimension, such as race, religion, or class. This reductionism validates exclusionary practices and perpetuates systemic inequality. Pluralism and belonging. To counter this reductionist approach, pluralism and multiculturalism embrace the multidimensional nature of identity, promoting inclusion by rejecting simplistic labels. Societal shifts and the normalization of identity. Reconstruction of normalcy. Challenging traditional binaries, such as abled versus disabled, fosters acceptance of diverse identities as part of the human spectrum. Advocacy efforts like the UN's anti-discrimination initiatives position these identities within a framework of universal dignity. Modern mechanisms of normalization. Language reform and awareness campaigns combat stereotypes, celebrating the unique contributions of diverse identities. These efforts pave the way for structural inclusivity and a broader acceptance of identity diversity. The dynamic essence of identity. Identity is not static. It evolves, shaped by the interplay of personal agency, societal expectations, and systemic forces. By embracing fluidity and complexity, we can move beyond reductionist narratives and foster a more inclusive understanding of identity. Ultimately, the normalization of identity requires balancing individual authenticity with collective inclusivity, redefining societal frameworks to embrace the multifaceted nature of humanity. Let us challenge the systems and narratives that confine identity to rigid categories. By embracing dynamic, intersectional approaches, we can create a world where identities are respected in their full complexity. Together, we can celebrate the shared humanity that transcends singular labels, redefining what it means to belong in a diverse and interconnected society.